I decided that, I loved photography and I wanted to try to start learning it. So in high school, I got to take classes, and fortunately, I got to learn formally on film in a dark room, black and white, color, and continued that through college. And what I think has stayed the same for me, whether I've been, working in the field, I've been in front of stage and behind the scenes for New York Fashion Week. I've done a lot of events, weddings, bar bat mitzvahs, and I've also helped a lot of small businesses do their headshots and kind of image branding. What has always stayed the same for me is that in photography, you're trying to do two things. You're trying to problem solve your physical settings, but you're also trying to problem solve how you're communicating and what you're communicating. And that storytelling element has always been the same and always been consistent through everything. And so that's why over the past 2 years, I've been focusing on my fine art photography and pushing that and just enjoying it more. And I want to help others just enjoy creating photos. I've been doing classes like this about once a month over the past year and a quarter. And I just want to help people kind of enjoy photography and picture. Okay, the audio is crackling for everybody. Hold on, I'll see if I can change that. But that's why I'm here. I just want to help people enjoy creating stuff. Okay, so since at least two people are saying the audio's wonky, just give me a second. I'll keep going, but I think I can fix it. Okay. Let's see. Test. Okay, is that better? Is that a little bit better? Perfect. Okay. Thank you for saying that. There was the input and output got switched, so thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. And this is why we monitor the chat. Awesome. All right. So let's admit all. Great. Perfect. Okay. And I think now everyone in the waiting room's in. So let's get started. Okay. Perfect. So table of contents, storytelling. A lot of people in your survey, this was meant to be more for beginner to intermediate, but a lot of people in the survey said you've been taking photographs for a while. So if this is a review, I hope it's a helpful review. But I'm going to talk about storytelling and how I understand it and how I interpret it through photos. We're going to talk about the what and why, like what's actually in your photo physically, like what are you actually taking the picture of, and why you want to try to take a picture of it, what you're saying behind it. We'll do a brainstorm practice, so it's going to be a little bit of free writing. If you want to use a pen and paper, great, or if you just want to use your computer and take notes, that's awesome too. We will, after we do the brainstorm sessions, I will ask some of you to share. You don't have to. I'll just share my stuff. If no one wants to participate, that's fine. And after that, we would go through how you would actually plan your shoot. So do you need props, costumes, equipment, etc. The wrap-up is going to be really quick. The wrap-up is when I will answer most of your questions. If I see anything pertinent in the chat, I will try to address it immediately, like if something comes up with the audio or the video, etc. But for the most part, I'm going to focus on the Zoom chat for that. Okay. A few more people are popping in. Great. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so storytelling. essentially, what are you trying to say? What intention, what idea are you trying to convey to anyone who's going to see your photo? Is it just you that's going to look at this picture? Is this going to go up on social media? Are you going to print it and give it to someone? What are you trying to say? A visual story does rely on context, and the context can be completely contained within the image. But majority of the time, there is going to be some sort of writing. There is going to be some sort of external context that's going along with the image. Even if you go into a museum, there are name plaques, there are artist statements, there are titles of pieces. All of that is written information that's going to influence how we're looking at a photo and what we're going to take away from it. It doesn't have to be complicated. I'm not saying that an image has to have like a full linear narrative, right? We're not going to have beginning, middle, and an end. I mean, even a movie is going to take like thousands of still photos, put them together, and take hours to get through that. We're not trying to do that. We're just trying to convey a thought, an idea, a phrase, an experience through one single still image. So if you think about it as narrative versus abstract, or another comparison is literal versus symbolic, the linear story is going to be closer to a documentary style of photos, right? News outlets, newspapers, magazines, websites. If they're showing pictures of an event, that's literal. That is, hey, I was there, I had a camera, I took a picture. We're seeing a snapshot of the action. Or maybe you go to your kid's soccer game or their dance recital or whatever, and you're taking pictures there. That's documenting an event. That is more literal. And you could be choosing to include or exclude certain elements of that event to convey a certain experience, that emotional experience that you had there, but it's still pretty literal. Whereas if you might also just be taking a photo or creating a photo to express a thought that you had, a feeling. Again, a shared experience, but something that you're trying to connect with. And what I think got a little bit thrown out of order here. This is an example of two images that I would title them both the same. I title them both Head in the Clouds, right? On the left, that's like a literal representation of Head in the Clouds. That model, we put a fake cloud. We took some stuffing and made a fake cloud and put it on our head. And that was it. That was the idea for the image. Everything there is done in camera. I wanted it to be quick, easy. We're done. On the right-hand side, I also call that one Head in the Clouds. But I think we get a different context because of what's included in the scene. While that couch isn't the stereotypical like chaise lounge that you would get at a therapist's office, I do think we get the idea that someone's going in for counseling. They want to go talk to someone. So it's a little bit more of a healing process or working through something. Whereas the one on the left is a little bit more whimsical. It's fun. It's playing around. They're both weird. They're both surreal. And you wouldn't call either one of these documentary because they're clearly manipulated images. But because we have the context, that title, Head in the Clouds, we're just drawing different meanings from the images themselves, but then comparing them to each other, we're getting very different meanings. Does that make sense? Just as an example of how we're getting that context in there. Okay, a couple more. So what is your story? Whatever you want to say is valid. And like I said, it doesn't have to be complicated. but what do you want to say, and where do you pull your inspiration from? So questions to ask yourself if you're stuck about what to take a photo of or how to make an image look cool. What do you want people to walk away with? I know we should be creating for ourselves, but people are going to view your artwork. I think art is meant to kind of start a community, start a discussion, and it should be, even if it's personal, it should be viewed by other people. And maybe it's only one or two other people you trust, but I do think art is meant to be shared. So I am going to talk about sharing it with people. So what do you want them to take away? What would you hope your photo conveys to someone other than yourself? Do you want them to get a feeling from your picture? Do you want them to look at a picture and feel happy, sad, disgusted? Do you want it to be comical? Do you want to try to instill an action or the desire to take action? Do you want to challenge a belief? Do you want to confuse your audience? I kind of like to confuse people. I think it's fun. And, think about that. Like, what do you want your end goal to be? As you're thinking of photos, as you're going through your day, is there iconography that pops out at you? I went through the seasonal items at like Marshall's and TJ Maxx and Target, and I bought like everything this year that had skulls. I don't know. That was like my theme this year. And I don't know why, but it was really sticking out to me. And I noticed I try to bring in skulls to a lot of pictures. Like if I'm bored and I just want to go take a photo, I try to go run and grab a skull. And I don't know why. I guess I just think they're cool. But a skull can have a lot of symbolism. Okay. So is there iconography that's popping up for you, right? It's Christmas now, so are you really drawn to wreaths? Are you drawn to Christmas trees? Are you more drawn to the snowflakes, the lights, etc.? And then the last part, what part of photography do you enjoy the most? Do you like actually taking the picture? Do you like working in front of the camera? Do you prefer to spend most of your time taking the picture setting up your lighting? Are you really good at lighting or really enjoy lighting? Or do you like to edit? I know some people that would rather just take a bunch of random pictures and then collage it together, and that's really heavy. That's a really heavy part of their process. If you're going to create a photo and you wanted to say something, you should enjoy the process of creating it. And so make that your own and make that how you want to continue taking pictures. So what and why? I keep pausing to let people into the Zoom, so I apologize for that. Okay, what and why. Okay, so the what I'm talking about is your subject, and I'm talking about we will always have a physical subject, what we're actually taking a picture of, and then we'll have the subject, which is our theme, our idea, right, with that story that we want to say. So we need them to kind of work together. If you want to take a picture of, I'll use a skull as an example. If you want to take a picture of a skull, it'd be a really morbid, maybe funny, it's my sense of humor funny, to take a picture of a skull in a birthday hat, right? Like one of those cone party hats, and give it to someone as a birthday card. Happy birthday. That's funny. That's juxtaposing two icons, the party hat and the skull, together in the same image to make it comical, to say a message, hey, happy birthday, glad you're here, but 1 year closer. So there's a second subject there. And you're taking a picture of the skull, but you're putting it with other elements to say something. Now, if you want a happy birthday where you're trying to be grateful and say, hey, I like you, I'm glad you're here, I want you to stay with me for a while longer, you probably don't want to include the skull in that. Maybe you just include the birthday hat. Maybe you include a cake. Maybe you include a picture of the two of you together, etc. You know what I'm saying? What you're trying to say will be affected by what you're including in the image, as far as your actual subject, your props, whatever. And I've talked about the elements of composition in another webinar, so I'm not going to go down that hole. But you need to be aware of how you're conveying your theme with what is in your picture. If you want to take a picture of an item, like if you really want to take a picture of that skull, go ahead. Take the picture. Take all the pictures you want. Put in a party hat. Take the party hat out. Put in a flower. Take the flower out. Move it through your house. I don't care. Keep taking pictures of it, and you can always reverse engineer the meaning. I kind of like doing that as a way to get out of a creative funk. If I have an object that I really like, I think it looks cool or whatever, I might just keep taking pictures of it and kind of using that as a sketching opportunity, right? I can draw a little bit. I can draw stick figures. But even then, if I draw something out, if I go back and look at it later, I don't always remember what I was trying to draw. So if I have an opportunity, I have a little bit of time to play creatively, I'll start taking pictures of something and build off of that scene. I think that helps me generate ideas further down the road, because I'm practicing taking the pictures of a subject, practicing the technique. I can come back and know how something works and know how to execute something a little bit better. You might be starting off with the concept first rather than what you actually want to photograph. Maybe you don't have an object or a person or subject, physical subject in mind, but you have that concept. So this is where the brainstorming, I think, really comes in. If you want to try to convey an idea, a theme, it's really easy to just, I don't want to make it sound easy. It is going to be from your point of view, and it's going to be from your understanding and experience. So you're the best resource. My favorite definition of creativity is that creativity is like a web and you're in the center. So all of your experiences, all of your knowledge, you're throwing out these webs, these strings, these spider webs, and creating this big connective mess. But only you're the only person that's going to have a web that looks like that, that's going to have all the connection points, right? Someone who studied as a marine biologist for years is going to have a lot of different experiences and contexts than someone who was a professional wrestler, right? And sometimes they're going to overlap, and that's awesome, but each of those people, they're going to have their unique view, their unique experience, and their unique brand of creativity coming from all their years of just living, right? And how they're synthesizing all their experiences together. So I think it's really important that we do brainstorming, that we do journaling, right? These photos, this is an example of the still life that I set up. So they're both different, but they're using the same settings. They're using the same setup, not camera settings, but they're using the same setup. We have some, fake pine needles. We have the skull, and I have that butterfly. But I started to go through and really work and change that still life just to have fun and play around, to see what I could do. So I asked myself the questions, okay, what if I just had the butterfly move? Okay, what if I did that, but I really slowed down my shutter speed, right? Because on the left, that butterfly was swinging, so we just get that color blur of the wings. But on the right, I put it on a stand, had it still, so we have that clearer image of the butterfly with the skull. Okay, we already talked about, right, it's going to come from your own understanding. When we are, Oh, I already talked about all this. I got ahead of myself. Right, okay. So when you're taking an image that's coming from your point of view, from your experience, whatever you want to convey, you can choose how much of yourself, like how personal you're willing to get, and that's fine. I do think as long as you're being authentic and you're not trying to be trendy with what you're trying to say or the opinion that you have, your images will reflect that. And I think more authentic, more honest images tend to resonate better with other people, but also as yourself. I think we all feel better when we know that we're being honest about how we're creating. So right now, I've been talking for long enough. Right now, we're going to do the free writing group exercise. So I would like you guys to think of a word, think of an idea, and we are going to do 5 minutes of just free writing. It should be stream of conscious. This would be how we're going to come up with a concept for a photo. We're going to come up with the imagery for a photo. And then we're going to come up with a plan on how to go actually take this photo. But right now, we're just trying to get all the ideas out. So what I want you to do, we're going to take 5 minutes. Pick a word. It can be a noun, it can be a verb, it can be an action. Maybe it's something you've been thinking about, a feeling. You know, is it grief? Is it happiness? Is it aging? Whatever. Is it a snowflake? Pick one very simple idea like that, and we're going to write for 5 minutes. If you're blanking on an idea, use an idea generator. What that could be is you can take a dictionary out, just open it up to a random page, and the first noun that pops out at you, or the first object. I think nouns and objects are a little bit easier to start off with, because you can build thoughts around that, like how do you feel about this object, what is this object typically used for, etc. So I find it easier to pick that, but if it's a verb or something else, we can keep going for it. We can do the opposite, like grief. If we used grief as the example, we might think of tissues. We might think of lilies. Lilies are typically sent to funerals, right? And that's a funeral is where we would feel grief. We can go from there. So everyone pick your word. I'm going to pick freedom for this. So I'm going to be writing off of that, freedom, for the next 5 minutes, and I'll set a timer. So if you want to do that with me, that can be our word. We'll do freedom. But if you want to pick your own, feel free. And we are starting now. It's going to be awkwardly quiet, so just bear with me. Okay, we're about halfway through, another 2.5 minutes. Okay, we're just under a minute. Okay, so wrap up your last thought. That was about 5 minutes. Awesome. Great. Oh, I love it. I love that everyone's already sharing. So if you guys don't mind, I'll go ahead and light. Whatever. I'll go ahead and I'll share. I'll read out some of these. Okay, so yeah, we had Norma said she was going to do exercise. Nancy picked flowers. Audrey picked love. Oh, what are we doing here? Hold on 1 second, guys. There's a ghost. Okay. Anyways. Still a ghost. Okay. It's always something. All right. My bad. Okay, so Norma, you did exercise. So she thought of sweat, extra weight, hula hoop, gym, weight, swimming, biking people, helping, lockers, sauna, muscles. Awesome. Those are all great visuals. Rick had chaos. So he thought disarray, jumble, turmoil. Is it tangible? Can you identify it? Mindfulness, divergent, different directions, extending different directions. And I like that kind of idea of, okay, how do I feel a little bit when I'm in chaos? David, fog, mystery, uncertainty, isolation. Yes, yeah, I definitely, when I think of fog, like that big mystery, like what is in there. Feeling alone in that. Aubrey, love, couples, self-care, flowers, babies, families, hugs. I think remembering that flowers is also a symbol, especially of love, but also of grief, of happiness, of celebration. That's something that's really interesting. Wayne thought of lost, woods, faces, smoke, lights, mysterious, life mask, real or not. Awesome. Yeah, so I love it. I love it. That's all great. When we go through these writings, we might be doing like a couple of rounds of this. So let's see. I'm going to pick and then E said he was thinking of, or they were thinking of lead shoes because their upstairs neighbor has a heavy tread. And that is a really funny, I think it's a funny image to put in your head of really heavy, obnoxious shoes that have no practical purpose. And then to think about, okay, well, how can we pair this? So if I hear lead shoes and I'm thinking of that I'm annoyed from my neighbor upstairs having a heavy tread, how can I convey that in an image, right? When I was going through, and I'm just going to pull from my examples to make this go a little quicker. When I was thinking of freedom, I kept coming back to a lot of things like broken chains, open doors. But I thought a lot about birds, and I thought about feathers and flight and being able to like take off from the ground and really be really be free, like have no attachments. And I think that idea of attachment and lack of attachment kept coming through. So I started thinking about how, well, you could have freedom, but then you have no accountability or responsibility to other people. You could have freedom, but you may be sabotaging your community or your connection with people, right? And thinking a little bit about those relationships. So now that we've all kind of done this exercise and we've thought, it sounds like we've thought of, yeah, Nancy's got her flowers in there. Now that we've all had a chance to think about these themes, so it seems like we all got some great visuals, some really good nouns in there, the fog, the flowers, even with chaos. Who's that from? Chaos from Rick. The idea of things extending in different directions. It sounds like we all have some sort of visual that we've thought about and can play with. And now we want to try to pair that with a concept, with an idea. So we're going to take just 2 more minutes, pick one of your visuals that you had. And David, I know you've kind of already done this with fog, but delve a little bit deeper and think about how this image makes you feel or how you want other people to react to this image, right? So for me, I think I'm going to focus on the birds and the feathers as symbols of freedom and kind of disconnecting from community, right? So we're just going to do this for like 2 minutes. And that is starting now. So if you just focus on the emotions or the feelings and less on the objects for this turn, but Okay, we got about 30 seconds if you want to wrap up. Okay, that was the 2 minutes. And obviously, when you're doing this on your own, you can take as much time as you want, just to keep moving. Okay, norm or shared, so exercise of feelings, feeling strong, proud, walking tall, which it's a definitely like you when you are walking tall, you know what that feels like, right? That pride, that confidence, smiling, happy energy. Awesome, those are great examples. We also have, if anyone else wants to share, I'd love to hear that and read that. Rick, yes, extending different directions. Okay, Grand Central Station at peak with motion blur. And that's awesome that you're thinking about how you're creating this image in a photographic style, in a sense, because you're already thinking about how you're going to work to convey the chaos, everything moving, the action, the feeling of unsteadiness, uncertainty, because we can't see the figures, right? We can't get a clear image of them. Awesome. While everyone else, I'd love to hear everyone else's. I had started thinking about the birds and the feathers, and I thought immediately of, and that lack of attachment. And I immediately thought of a bird leaving the nest for the first time, and there's fear there. There's uncertainty. You're leaving home. You're leaving comfort, but there's also possibilities. There's opportunities. There's potential. And to me, I started thinking about, okay, well, how could I convey that? Should the bird be flying towards the camera or away from the camera? For me, I think the bird should be flying away. Why do I think the bird should be flying away from the camera? Well, I think flying at me is too confrontational. I think we're also, my feeling, my interpretation of this freedom is having a double-edged sword of potentially you're losing your community, you're losing your family, you're losing a connection to things. It doesn't make sense for the subject to be flying at me. It doesn't make sense for the subject to be trying to join me. It makes sense that the subject would be trying to get away from the viewer, right? So I think the bird should be flying away from the camera. I think having the camera or the point of view being from lower, closer to almost inside the nest is also going to help convey that sense of leaving, of disassociation, of detachment, because the viewer is going to be looking at it from the point of view of where your camera is, and being left like they're feeling, like they're looking at that bird leaving from inside the nest being a symbol, another symbol of home, community, comfort. That is going to impact how my message of freedom, it's a good thing, you can feel relieved when you have freedom, you can see opportunities in front of you, but you run the risk of leaving others behind, of disassociating, detaching yourself from certain community, of outgrowing parts of your old life when you move towards freedom, right? So we did all this, oh, poor Gary. So we did all this in about, 7 minutes, 10 minutes in between discussions. Wayne, you joined in. feeling of confusion, unsettledness, questioning, disconcerting. Nancy joined in with her flowers, feeling happiness, sense of wonder, sunshine on a cloudy day, bringing in that joy, bringing in that light, that inspiration, encouragement. I really love all that. And David, since he was ahead of us and I had already thought of emotions, which is fine. Like, you don't have to think of one and then the other. I do tend to, for myself, I like looking at physical and literal first, but I think that's more of how my brain, my mind works. David said he focused on execution, which was also what I was just talking about. So, for example, simulating fog via shallow depth of field in macro photography. Yeah, that's a great example. If you can't actually have fog, but you want to simulate that or simulate the feeling of being in a fog, lost in the fog, blurring out subjects, very shallow depth of field. That's great. Okay. So now that you might have this idea in your head where you know what you're going to photograph literally, right? Your subjects, and you know the story that you want to put behind the image, what you want to convey, then we would make a plan. So you would want to think about, okay, if I'm going to try to take the image that's in my mind and I want to actually put that in front of my camera, what props do I need? What location should I shoot at? Can I do this in my house with props? Can I go outside? Do I need to make a special trip somewhere? Do I have the equipment to take this photo? Which I think if you're shooting with your phone, if you're shooting with a camera, if you can change your lenses, if you can't, you have a tool to create an image. You don't have to go out and buy anything or get special lights or whatever. Take your idea and you can make it work with your equipment if you can't easily access the ideal piece. You know what I'm talking about? Your phone can take good photos. I know that's blasphemous to some people, but it's still about you as the photographer and what we just went through, like what you want to say and how you want to say it and how you want to affect other people. That's going to make a good photograph. If there are certain aesthetic elements, like David had just mentioned, he would want to make sure that he could execute really shallow depth of field. If there are certain elements that having a certain piece of equipment is necessary or make it a lot easier, then yes, think about borrowing it or investing in that if that's going to be part of your creative process down the road. But does that make sense? I think everyone has, if you have a camera on your phone, you already have a lot that you can do. Some people like really freak out that they have to get all the gear. I think everyone should, the best camera you have is the best camera is the one you have on you. That's the quote. So just remember that, like, you can work with what you have. And even if you wanted to make a shallow depth of field, but you only have your phone, there are free apps. There's also, you can play tricks with it. You can put something really close to the lens and shoot through, which I can talk about later if you're curious on that. But I know the majority of people who responded said they already have some experience, so I'm not going to go into that totally. Now that I ranted. Okay. Think about the equipment you have, and then also think about how will you edit the photos. I don't like editing. If I can avoid sitting in front of the computer for hours, I will. I try to do very minimal edits. If I can change the color in camera, I'll mess around with my color temperature. If I can build a prop versus take photos of different things and composite them later, I will. But that's because I like that. I like that hands-on part of the process. I like feeling like I'm physically creating something in real time and not just kind of collaging it later. But I know a lot of people are the opposite, and part of their creative process is taking a bunch of photos, picking a bunch of photos, and putting them together at the end. And they're both valid forms of art. It's just a matter of preference, but I think if you're going to keep doing this, make sure you enjoy it. So try to incorporate what you enjoy into your workflow. All right. More brainstorming help. If you wanted, I'm sorry, my slides seem to have gotten out of order. If you liked the writing exercise, great. That's one of my favorites. I also just try to journal when I can. I also really like giving myself limits, because decision fatigue is real. When there are too many options, when there are too many roads to go down, right? If it's like Rick's idea of chaos and everyone's just going in a bunch of different directions, finding that focus and clarity can be difficult. So sometimes limiting yourself will actually help you at least keep moving in a direction and keep you creating. So if you're feeling blocked, this always helps me, is to pick a limit or a challenge. So whether that's I can only shoot photos on 100 ISO and I have to manually change my camera, right? So I'm going into different situations where I might not always use 100 ISO, like inside on a rainy afternoon, but I have to try to make it work to get a good picture. Or I tell myself I have to go take 50 photos in 30 minutes and just go, keep shooting. Or try to take 50 photos of the same object, because eventually you're going to get bored. You're going to take the same photo 10, 20 times. And then you're going to start realizing, okay, well, I can't just keep taking the same photo. How can I move around it? How can I place this object differently? And you're going to start to, by setting a limit, you're going to start pushing yourself in different ways. You could also just pick something new to try, a new technique. I find it really fun to do the silly, like, DIY, a little kitschy effects, like if you cut out a shape and try to change your bokeh. I think that's fun. I really love using reflective materials in my pictures, whether it's mirrors or glass or bits of old chandeliers or just other shiny surfaces. I like kind of making distortions, trying to see if I can really distort and manipulate the light in a very obvious way. I also think it's fun. I'll go into my camera, and again, you can get apps to do this on your phone. I like going into my camera and changing the Kelvin white balance. So if I'm daylight, I should be at 5600, 5500. Maybe I go all the way down to 32, and then I adjust the tint. So it's really green or really magenta. And then I just keep shooting like that. I don't think it's anything I'd, want to sell or try to get in an art show, but it's fun. And I think as you're enjoying playing and creating, you'll find ways to create an image and to create parts of an image that might help you later on down the road. Okay. All right. So wrap up. What to do next? I'd love to hear if you guys had a key takeaway from the class. This is a little bit different than what I normally do. I'm normally like sticking to a very technical lecture in these webinars, whether doing photo basics or composition. So this was a little bit different. So I really love some feedback on that. I appreciate you guys who gave me the feedback in the beginning that the mic wasn't set up the right way. Even though we checked 3 times. But yeah, I'd love to hear if you have any other takeaways on that and any other feedback you have for me. We did focus on the ideas, but not so much on how to share your work, right? Whether you're going to put it up on a website, social media, try to get it in gallery, print, or whatever. So that might be something where you want to go follow up on and think about how you're going to share these images and and what context that's going to bring to it. I encourage you to keep learning and keep shooting, and I'd love it if we could do it together. So if you want to stay in touch, I do run a Facebook group, Imperfect Photography. I know a few of you are in there already. Thank you guys for coming on. If you aren't already in there, please feel free to join. It's free. The Facebook group's free. Once a week on like Wednesday-ish, I try to just share a few articles of what I'm reading, what I'm getting inspired by. And on Friday, I encourage you guys to share like photos that you've been taking. We're not trying to share. You can share whatever you want, but we're not trying to share like grand masterpieces. It's just for fun. It's to try to make sure that we're all keeping that enjoyment in photography and enjoyment of creating. So you don't have to always bring your best. Just bring your enjoyment. And also, for those of you who are newer to photography, I am trying to work up building some course offerings. So if you go to learn.behaggerty.com, I do have like a micro course available, and it's really on the basics of photography. We go through manual camera settings. I do a little bit of this in there as well. We talk about, composition of photography. I go through a really quick live shoot, taking a person out to the park and how to work with just natural lighting there. We touched very briefly on the basics, right? But there is a code for 50% off. I'm going to email this to you when I send you a link to the recording and everything. But yeah, no pressure. And like I said, if you want to join and just stay engaged, the Facebook group's free. It's always going to be free. And we also try to do like quarterly, we do tutorial challenges. Okay, if anyone has questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. I'm going to check a couple other places outside of Zoom. And I am going to stop the recording here. So if you're watching in the future, this is where the recording stops.